Without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce today's first session, Your Institution's Brand and Digital, the Brand Strategist Guide. This half-hour rapid-paced session will kick off the day by covering a variety of key considerations and best practices to help you successfully manage and elevate your institution's brand across digital platforms. Our co-presenters, Rob Zinkin and Christy Harper, are seasoned marketing professionals. Rob has been with the Indiana University for 15 years and is currently in a system-wide role as Associate Vice President in Marketing. In this role, he develops, champions, and deploys the university's brand strategy, leads IU's internal full-service marketing agency, and serves as marketing liaison to the flagship campus leadership and marketing community. Christy Harper has more than 20 years experience in branding and marketing, both inside companies, with agencies, and in higher ed. She was founder and president of the brand consulting firm Brand Endeavor and served in a senior leadership role at Siegel & Gale, a leading global brand consulting firm. Christy previously served as Assistant Vice President for University Marketing at Cal Lutheran and just recently started her new role as Assistant Vice President for Marketing at the University of Arizona's Division of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, Academic Initiatives, and Student Success. Rob and Christy, I'd like to turn things over to you now. Let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mallory. We are excited to be here and be part of the conference and kick off the day. And during our time, we would like to cover some overarching principles to provide a framework, useful lens for you as you think through, as you digest the subsequent presentations and this lineup of excellent speakers that are forthcoming. And for those of you who are joining as a team and with some of your colleagues today, I would ask each of you to take a moment, write on a piece of paper what your ultimate marketing objective is for your college, for your university. What change are you ultimately trying to affect with your institution's marketing? And then at some point today, discuss those answers and see how much your team does or does not align all together. So we are going to address these three core considerations that Christy and I both rely on when it comes to our university's digital marketing. Strategy first, audience centricity, and everything is connected. So let's start with strategy. And one of my pet peeves is that higher education, all of us as marketers, we often take flack over the various taglines that we see across our sector. You see the massive list of taglines, and it's an easy place to start. It's an easy criticism for higher education, an easy target. Yes, there are taglines that aren't necessarily differentiating. Yes, an institution doesn't even have to have a tagline. That's never the goal. But the point is, it's an empty exercise to start comparing a bunch of taglines or looking at this list, because we have a competitive set of institutions. It's within that set where we want to differentiate, not necessarily within a set of 4,000 some colleges and universities, 3,500, 4,000. The competition matters. And when it comes to digital marketing, though, we do need to be looking far and wide and outside of higher education. Our students, our prospective students, our other key audiences expect to interact with us online as they do with other brands, whether that's Starbucks or whether that's Disney or any number of others, particularly in terms of ease of interaction. So it's easy to think of digital marketing as merely a platform for brand marketing or a platform for direct marketing, and we'll dive into that more in a bit. But digital marketing, the online experience, it is the brand experience. So for instance, we can't have the disconnect between saying on one hand, we're a world-class institution or a place to become your best, when the digital experience is far from world-class. Or you have ranked academic programs, but the online experience that you have applying to that program or finding out about career outcomes for that program is a cumbersome one. So digital is the brand experience, and what do we want that experience to convey? So take a second and think of brands that excel in the digital space. Which brands come to mind? Whether that's Airbnb or Patagonia, and probably many, many others. They all have at least one thing in common, and that's brand clarity. It's a prerequisite for effective digital presence, for effective digital marketing. They know who they are and why it matters. Those brands know their position in the marketplace, how they're differentiated in ways that their target audience values. They've gone through the disciplined process of brand strategy, that process that involves research and consensus building and strategic brand positioning and creative development. And fortunately, there's encouraging news in this regard for higher ed, as brand is increasingly becoming a strategic imperative for colleges and universities. So most institutions have indeed undertaken brand strategy. And this ranges from 69% of doctoral institutions, that figure coming from last year's CMO study conducted by Case, the Chronicle, and Simpson Scarborough, to 76% of respondents in mStoner's 2015 State of Higher Ed Branding Survey. So ideally, your universities are among those 3/4 that have done this important work. So in addition to clarity around the brand with a documented brand strategy, it's critical to have clarity in terms of what we want our marketing to accomplish, that initial question that I posed to you. And Christy has an excellent model in which to approach brand.
So when you think about it, one of the challenges with brand is how do we define what a brand is? And a lot of institutions have different ways to describe it. The one that I think is the most useful is to think about brand as a promise. So your brand is a promise that you make to your stakeholders, which has to be delivered upon consistently with every interaction. And if you look at sort of the promise making then and promise keeping cycle, what you find is that digital plays a role both in promise making, which is usually done by marketing, communications, admission, and then you have your faculty and staff, which are really keeping the promise. They're the ones delivering the ideal experience, and then students and other stakeholders are at the receiving end of that brand experience. And often there can be a gap between the promises made, how the promises are being kept, and what the student experience is. Ultimately, digital happens in all of our institutions. Digital has a role at each stage of this funnel. Digital is part of promise making. In other words, what is our website saying? What's happening with digital advertising, email, etc. Then we have promise keeping. So what's happening with online learning? How do students access services through the website or digital experience? How consumer friendly is the website? And then ultimately, is that brand experience delivering what we promised? So that's the way that I think of digital and brand as being integrated. Rob, if you go to the next slide, when we think about brand building, it's really important, as we keep reiterating, to start with the brand promise. So the brand promise is at the core. Coming out from that brand promise is the brand identity. So things like name, logo, tagline, visual system, those should be designed and conceived with digital in mind, but they're not necessarily driving your digital strategy. But then then you see brand really taking hold in communications and actions. So how is the interactive platform, again, delivering the brand experience, but also how's our website or other digital communications conveying that brand promise? And we can look at a couple of good examples that Rob mentioned earlier that I think are just really compelling examples of digital experiences delivering on the brand promise. So Airbnb literally has their inquiry line, their search line is their brand promise. So their brand promise is book unique homes and experience a city like a local, and then you type in what you're looking for. And in some larger cities, like I just used Los Angeles, which is my former hometown, you can search for homes, you can search for experiences, or you can search for restaurants, all as part of that experiencing Los Angeles like a local. So they literally make the promise and keep the promise on their homepage, which is amazing. Likewise, Patagonia. So Patagonia makes their promise deeper into their site, but essentially their brand promise is to build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire, and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And just earlier this week, I went on their homepage, and these first three images are their homepage. That was their rotating graphics. So they're saying cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire, and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And the first thing you see on their homepage is the president stole your land, meaning reducing the size of the national monuments. Whether you agree with that or whatever you think about that idea, it's very incredibly faithful to their brand promise. And it's a bold statement that's saying, here's what we believe, and literally, again, making and keeping the promise. Here's how you can get involved. Here's how you can take action. They talk about their fair trade fleece. They talk about their environmental guarantees, but they also sell stuff, right? So they also are talking about buying snow gear, and here's the people and the audiences that are using their snow gear. So we'll talk a little bit later in this presentation that you don't have to think about digital as a trade-off between brand building and kind of retail selling enrollment or selling programs. And Patagonia is a great example of how they do both, even within just their digital environment. Both their what's their promise and how do they deliver on that, and then how can you buy their products.
So strategy first, and second is audience centricity. And this has to be at the foundation of digital marketing. There's great appeal to digital because of targeting, because of measurement. But even just thinking of those two terms for a moment, the terminology targeting implies this ready, aim, fire approach. But if our role as marketers is to represent the voice of our audiences, all of our important audiences, are we instead seeing digital as presenting us opportunities to deliver value to our audiences, just as Christy outlined in the examples? Are we framing this as a way to connect with those who would benefit from these types of interactions? And measurement, just because we can measure it doesn't necessarily mean it matters. Do those metrics that we're so focused on, do they connect with what we're ultimately trying to impact for our institutions? And this is where our organizational structures and silos that we see so commonly in higher ed prove to be challenging. We organize ourselves into functional silos for audiences that look at the institution holistically. And it's hard to drive a seamless, cohesive brand experience when pieces and parts of that experience are spread across different offices and different units, and even across different information systems.
So key to this whole thing about thinking about how you make digital central to your audience experience is understanding the customer journey, right? We need, and this is excerpted from mStoner's customer touchpoint mapping, but essentially this is looking at a student's kind of typical touchpoint map. And at almost every single stage of this journey, there is a role for digital. And the question is, how do we integrate digital so that it's not about what we want you to know, but it's about what you need to know to progress further in the journey? And, you know, I think that is the mistake that I see made over and over in higher ed, is we focus more on what we want to tell you than what you need to know to progress. And we need to put ourselves, you know, the key to touchpoint mapping and the key to systems like this is to look at, let's think about the experience from your point of view. What do you need to see? What's important to you as the customer? And then how do we provide that useful information, data, experience all through the digital journey to get you to that endpoint? I think most institutions are more about chest pounding than about serving the customer or the stakeholder through the journey.
And we've done experience mapping at Indiana University and found it very valuable. The example here is related to external research for faculty and staff at the university who are working to secure external research grants. And this will give you a sense of how our team approaches this type of exercise. We've also mapped the admissions experience for our two core campuses, Indiana University Bloomington and IUPUI in Indianapolis. And I would emphasize the importance of research here. So for example, for the IU Bloomington admissions map, our team went to high schools. We spoke with high school students, we spoke with counselors, even spoke to parents, and we needed to understand the audience, prospective students, and we needed to understand their experience, which is impacted by those other audiences. So in looking at the map and the key touch points, our goal was we wanted to understand what constituents are doing, thinking, and feeling at any given point. And we identify high points and pain points along the way with opportunities and with messaging. And this also gives us a chance to step back and see whether these touch points, whether these communications do in fact reinforce the brand and point back to the brand strategy in some manner, whether that's directly or indirectly. And frankly, to go back to Christy's earlier point, it's not the easy approach to take. It's harder to do the work of understanding your audience's motivations than it is to just talk about and sell the university and all the offerings and features that we have. It's easier just to tell that story rather than figuring out the story that our audiences are telling themselves and how we fit into that story that they're telling themselves. So experience mapping helps bring to light this holistic constituent experience, which is especially helpful for complex processes. And it's an obvious reminder that a connected experience has touch points of many, many different forms. Those touch points that are in person, online, and through more traditional marketing forms. And for us, this experience map has not been a one and done. It's very fluid. So we continue to monitor it, we revise it, and we update it as needed.
And one of the questions that I always ask when I'm reviewing any kind of creative execution related to this idea is this about us or is this about them meeting the audience? And I've been at Arizona for a week and a half, so I think I can critique the work a little bit. I think if you look on the left-hand side, this is Arizona's kind of admission landing page. And what I see here is it's really about us. We're showing a great looking student who looks fun and excited, but we're saying, okay, join the best students in the country and become a Wildcat. There's no reason you should do that. There's no selling or convincing. It's very transactional. And then you've got three things you can do: visit, request info, or apply. And just there's no romance to it. So looking at this, I went on to all of our key competitors' admission pages, and actually everyone's doing the same thing, which is talking about us, trying to get you to do a transaction with us rather than trying to get you to fall in love with us. The best example I found of an about them was Colorado State. So if anybody from Colorado State's on, props to you. At least they're talking to you as a customer. So they say, you know, applying to a university can be intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. Use our student-specific application guides to understand the process. So there's a little bit of selling. There's a little bit of we're here to help, right? Meet your future classmates. There's a you there, where in the Arizona example, there's no you. It's really about us, and you should be part of us rather than how do we help you through this transition. I encountered the same thing at Cal Lutheran. These are just some examples of kind of before and after. So on the left-hand side, this was our original advertising for our Graduate School of Education. And it was, we know education matters. We offer a Master of Arts in Educational Leadership. You know, one of the things I'll often do is go in and circle how many times do we say we, us, the university, et cetera, versus how many times do we talk to the audience. It's a really good exercise in seeing whether it's about us or about them. And on the right-hand side is just a simple banner ad, but it's saying, education's transforming. Are you ready to lead? Then we're ready for you, right? We're looking for educational leaders. And I think this is just an example of, it's not about us and what we offer. It's about how we can accomplish things together and how we can help you accomplish your goals.
And number 3, everything is connected, the final overarching theme. And here we're referring to mStoner's first law of branding, that everything is connected to everything else, which is another foundational point. To drive maximum effectiveness and efficiency of our marketing, we have to see digital as part of this bigger picture. And the challenge is connecting everything in a systematic way across multiple channels. And it's tempting to look at our digital marketing as this linear path and thus measure it in that same way, thinking in a linear way. But we know that our institution's online presence doesn't occur in a vacuum. So as our digital grows, our digital marketing presence, so does our overall brand ecosystem. And before we elaborate on that brand ecosystem, I want to return to brand strategy for a moment. At Indiana University, we're 2+ years into deploying our brand strategy, and that comes on the heels of another couple of years of going through an inclusive and research-informed process. And the essential characteristics that we wanted the Indiana University brand strategy to have were that it be externally focused, because the brand obviously lives in the minds of our target audience. And in higher ed, we sometimes get hung up talking to ourselves about ourselves. It had to be authentic. The brand is based on who you really are. Differentiating, knowing that we can't be all things to all people. Compelling, we have to bring the brand to life in ways that stir people's emotions, that moves them to action. And enduring. Our institution's mission endures, so should our brand strategy. Brand strategy flows directly from mission, vision, and values. So as part of our consensus building process, when we were in the development phase, there were so many questions on this particular point. People asking, well, how long is this going to last? How long will we have this? And I think the enduring nature of brand strategy is often the most overlooked characteristic. Brand strategy it's about the long game for an institution. And that's relevant to remember when we embark on digital marketing activities and to draw that connection. And one of my favorite marketing authors is Bernadette Jiwa, and this comment resonates on this point that in a digital business world where it's believed everything can be measured, there's an assumption that an action will result in a reaction. Much of our marketing is now created with the expectation that it will deliver an immediate, albeit short-term reward. Of course, the best marketing doesn't work this way. Immediate payoffs rarely lead to sustained results. So everything is connected. So how then, Christy, do we try to achieve that appropriate balance?
Well, I think we have to think about sort of the brand and the product in an ecosystem that works together, right? So most of us are using, or many of us are using digital to promote what I call products. Some institutions might disagree with that terminology, but essentially selling a degree program, getting enrollment in your bachelor's program, whatever it is, you're trying to get a butt in a seat, or you're trying to get a donor to give, or whatever it is, you're promoting a product. But that has to live in conjunction with your brand being built. So we all know it. In markets where our brand is stronger, we get more enrollment. In markets where our brand is less known, we get less enrollment. It's obviously they're working together. The challenge here is that a lot of people think that brand is the realm of traditional media. Brand is the realm of billboards and TV and radio and, not digital. And that product is the realm of digital, because product is, click, buy, enroll, register, and you can track. And the reality is that there's room for both in both types of media. So if you go, Rob, to the next slide, the way I like to think about it is that you have two types of campaigns, right? So you have product campaigns, which are promoting academic programs or schools. They're designed to generate top of funnel prospects, move them through the funnel. And then you have your brand campaign, which is promoting the university, and it's designed to build awareness and ideally also attribute association. So not just that you're being known, but that you're being known for something. So you have those two types of campaigns. And then you have two types of media. You have mass, which might be considered traditional media. So you've got your cable, your radio, out of home, print. That type of media is generally more expensive and less measurable, which is why it's often associated with brand promotion, which is also less measurable because you're not going to necessarily see a click right then or an enrollment or a RFI form being completed. And you want to use mass when your audience is hard to find and hard to target. Then you have your direct response, which is banner ads, direct mail, email, search engines. That's generally less expensive, more measurable, and used when your audience can be found and targeted. But you could do a brand promotion in, for instance, direct mail. You could do a brand building postcard to neighbors in your community. You know where your audience is, so you know how to target it, but it doesn't necessarily need to be an enrollment focused piece in order to be supporting the brand building. We do a lot of brand building on digital. We did, I should say, at Cal Lutheran, where I was a week and a half ago, we did do a lot of brand building on digital through things like digital radio, video, Facebook advertising, just to sustain awareness and soften the ground for the other enrollment activities we were doing on that same channel. Likewise, for instance, for our bachelor's completion program, which was really an audience that was hard to find and target, we did a lot of mass marketing to support that program. And there was a time when I moved us all entirely out of mass and into direct response for that bachelor's completion program. And our initiatives suffered because we weren't doing enough in mass to kind of keep the heat on the market in order to make that direct response channel work. So we have to think of all of these things as integrated, and it's not digital equals direct response, digital equals product promotion. It's find ways to use both types of channels in the right combination for both types of objectives.
And then looking at paid digital and where it is as part of that mix, and certainly it has to be part of the mix to help your institution be where your target audience is. And it's interesting to put the Ruffalo Noel Levitt's e-expectations data together year over year and look at prospect stated behavior, indicating that they are increasingly receptive to digital advertising, that they are indeed clicking on ads. And it's very likely that these numbers are going to increase. We'll see bumps each year. And there's a webinar next week on 2017 myth-busting marketing, enrollment marketing. mStoner and NRCCUA will share findings from research that they've conducted with prospective students and with higher ed marketing and enrollment professionals. And in that, 67% of teens recall seeing an ad from a college on their computer or mobile device. And of those, 36% of teens who recall noticing an ad did in fact click on that. So again, it's part of the marketing mix. It's a must, but it's part of that larger ecosystem. So it doesn't mean that we, of course, doesn't mean that we bombard with banner ads, but again, how is it part of a connected experience? How does it deliver value to our audiences? So combining all sectors, digital ad spend has now surpassed TV. And it's interesting to see these numbers specifically for higher education. It's no surprise that digital is accounting for a bigger and bigger piece of the pie. So 42% was digital for 2015. That increased to 44% in 2016. TV holding steady at 34%. And it may be a surprise that digital doesn't have a bigger piece of the pie for higher education. And it reinforces the point that Christy makes on how traditional and digital should work together, how everything is connected, that it's not one or the other, it's traditional and digital. It's a continuous channel. And we see that play out over and over again here. We have a digital campaign for our regional campuses, and we've seen one of the campuses' digital advertising consistently outperform the other campuses, and it's because it's supported by a TV buy in that region. And that TV buy makes those digital dollars work harder for that particular campus. So yes, the future certainly is in digital. We're seeing more and more dollars being invested in digital, and perhaps the better word is reallocated, that it's a reallocation of dollars, but don't underestimate that traditional paid media because of the fact that it's hard to measure. Be sure to track how that traditional media is influencing your other media channels. A final point about digital ad spend is the significance of knowing what the total marketing spend is across the institution. We work in decentralized environments, and typically more of the marketing spend is happening outside of central marketing than it is inside. That spend is distributed. So I did some research across Big Ten conference institutions with peers, and that was indeed the case. So on average, central marketing accounted for only 25% of the institution's total marketing spend, while the rest was happening at the unit level across the enterprise. And that can be School of Business, intercollegiate athletics, online education, and on and on. And if you work in central marketing at your school, do you know what that total spend is? Do you know where and how it's being spent? And at a conference this summer, I asked this question to colleagues, and about 30% didn't know. They didn't know what the total spend was. And I asked that question to marketing colleagues across the Big Ten conference here with IU and others, and about half did not know. So that's not necessarily a surprise considering the size and scope of the institutions and the decentralized nature that they have. Academic schools, colleges, other units, they're going to be investing more in digital, including paid digital. So without that necessary coordination and ability to see the larger picture, there's the potential of cannibalizing your own campaigns. You can end up competing with one another and not even knowing it, and driving up the cost for your institution, in addition to the possibility of presenting a fragmented brand and fragmented brand experience for your audiences. So what do? Many of us are in this position of having to strategically influence rather than control. Marketers here across the enterprise at the individual schools and units, they don't report to central marketing. So it's more of a matter of how do you build trust? How do you build these relationships and position yourself as a strategic resource and a strategic partner? At Indiana University, we ask schools and units to submit their marketing plans and marketing budgets to us and share that information. Other universities take a different approach, tracking spend by accessing purchasing data from the budget office and reviewing that information. And your institution may have some sort of approval process where you have to centrally approve any buys that happen, and perhaps the corresponding creative too, that all of that has to come through your office, which is a great approach to take. And this can certainly be supported by having a clear university level policy that empowers central marketing to do this. So they're complicated issues, and ones that, in fact, that Christy didn't have to deal with in her previous institution, where all of this was centralized and there was one budget when it came to marketing spend. But no matter the structure at your institution, we know that digital ad spend is increasing at the unit level. So it's more important than ever to have this enterprising approach to working across all schools and units, enterprise-wide collaboration, and sharing of information. So as we close, I want to leave you with one last comment of inspiration. And as a side note, I have a book club at Indiana University where I invite marketers from across the campus to join me, where we read a book each semester and then get together at the end of the semester to discuss it. And I have just one criterion, that has to be a non-marketing book, but one that has marketing implications. And we've read some interesting stuff. But in terms of marketing books, this is the best one that I've read this year, Friction, Passion Brands in the Age of Disruption by Jeff Rosenblum. And we'll give some of these away throughout the day. And the quote relates directly to the discussion that we've had, that digital is the mid-funnel playground. It's about creating experiences that help the audience understand what the brand truly stands for and how it can impact their lives. While most brands are stuck in the awareness building mindset or the conversion only attitude, those that adopt this expansive approach succeed at differentiation. So we wish you and your institutions all the best in succeeding at differentiation. So thanks so much for the opportunity, and we're looking forward to the rest of the online conference.